everybody. Welcome back to the Quantum Guide Show, episode 238. Today, my guest is Ryan Patrick Burns, and the subject is altered weather and climate hoax. Gary May was supposed to be with us today, but he had a medical situation, and you will see him next month for sure. So I want to start off by saying that the thumbnail and the background I did use AI for, but nothing else in this show or the programming is AI generated. And I want to start saying that disclaimer before my shows because a lot of people are submitting stuff that's AI generated, and I have no problem with what other people do, but I want to keep, my shows as real as possible. And so I will not be using AI for any part of this, no scripting or anything like that. And I know a lot of you out there appreciate this because you want to view the real thing. You don't want to watch a bunch of phony baloney. There's enough of that already out there. So let me tell you a bit about my guest, who, of course, needs no introduction, as many of you follow Ryan Patrick Burns on the Hero Paranormal channel on YouTube, Rumble, and many other podcasts. Ryan began researching the Uintah Basin and the mysterious Skinwalker Ranch years ago. But when his passion for answers could no longer be quenched, he left his corporate job in Salt Lake City and moved to the desolate and remote basin to investigate the ranch full time. Ryan now owns property overlooking the ranch, where he hosts a popular podcast, Hero Paranormal, and has also written about his experiences investigating Skinwalker. Check out his links in the description. Ryan is one of the best and most thorough researchers into the paranormal realms, as well as the overlap within the social reality. Hang on to your hat as we travel deep into the topic of weather modification and the climate hoax. Without further ado, I'll bring Ryan on the stage. Hi, Ryan. How you doing today?
Fantastic, Karen. Thanks so much for having me on.
My pleasure. It's truly a privilege to have you on and share your wealth of information and research with the viewers. But before we get started, I want to show everybody what I received. I don't know if you can actually see the label, but this is called Spice Organic Bronzer. And I also received this amazing bar of, I believe, your wife makes the soap as well, Ryan. And before we get started, I want you to share with everybody where they can find these amazing products. And thank you so much for sending them to me. I'm absolutely thrilled.
Thank you so much, Karen. I appreciate that. You can get those. Yeah, my wife, you could, well, let me tell you where you can get them and then I'll tell you the story behind it. My wife made them. You're correct. You can get those at either heroparanormal.com or you can go to happinessmedical.com. And the story is, my wife wanted a product and she wanted something safe and healthy that moisturizes your skin. And she just got so frustrated that she just made it herself.
Mhm.
And that's the story. So that's what it is. Great product. I use it daily and I love it. Keeps my skin looking and feeling great, even though essentially I'm always out in the desert and my skin should look like a saddle, but it doesn't.
No, you look fantastic. You look 10 years younger than what you even are, and that's a good testament to your wife's product. So I wanted to show you my appreciation, but I also wanted everyone to know about them and where they could find them. And again, the links will be are in the description below. And just thank you so much, Ryan. It was so kind of you to send those to me. I'm thrilled to bits. Now, Gary Michael May McGill was supposed to join us today, but last minute he had a medical appointment that he couldn't miss, and the two didn't jive it didn't jive as far as, the timing went, but he'll be back next month. He assures us for sure. So we're on our own today, Ryan. But we got a fascinating discussion. So I think the sort of stages of what I'd like to cover today is number one, weather modification. So now they've been telling us we've been crazy for years as we did research into the aerosol stuff, they're basically chemicals they're spraying into our atmosphere. And now we have evidence of actual weather modification. I think Texas is a fantastic place to start with that. And how that all ties into the whole climate hoax. Trump sure gave him hell at the United Nations this week, eh, Ryan?
What I was shocked. Say what you will about the guy. There were just too many things. I don't know if anybody saw, but for example, the escalator on the way up wasn't working or
Yeah.
somebody shut it off. So they had to walk up the stairs. The teleprompter wasn't working or somebody had to shut it off. Keep in mind, these things were working for everybody else. And yeah, let's just say the United Nations does not like Trump. And I don't think Trump likes the United Nations. With that said, I won't get political, but this is such a great topic, altered weather and climate hoax, because they go hand in hand. It's probably one of the biggest, if not the biggest topics of our time, and hardly anybody discusses it. If you talk
Mhm.
about it, they put you in the corral with all the quacks that think it's more than it is. But
Mhm.
there's people that believe, for example, that you can boil some vinegar and the sky within 200 miles will all clear right up. It's not that simple. But
Mm-mm.
the truth is, they aren't wrong. That it's very much altered. It's very much a hoax, and it's been created since the 60s. So,
Mhm.
I actually tend to go more on the side of the people that are boiling vinegar than the ones that are pretending it's not happening.
Mhm. Mhm. So, so, so true. Now, my first exposure to the whole idea of the aerosol sprays in our atmosphere happened quite a long time ago. I would say around 1998, there was a man that lived in the same town as me, and I knew him not really well. But he had this all figured out back then. And there's a big military Air Force base near the Comox Valley where I was living at the time. And he knew when each plane was taken off at regular intervals. He knew so much about it. And everybody just thought he was a complete nutter. He had so much flack from the community, even to the point where people were calling up the city and complaining about his yard because he used to grow a lot of natural herbs and stuff. And he was always in trouble. And, the guy had his own sets of problems. He had two sons that were both schizophrenic. Um, and an eccentric wife, but he still was so on top of this. And as it started to become more obvious. And I got to tell you, I don't know if it's a natural phenomenon or not, but the sun has changed the way it looks. Maybe it's because all the spraying, we're looking through the spray and it's altering the look of the sun. Of course, there used to be all kinds of cool videos out about a sun simulator and the research that they were doing into that. And so, but now you don't see all that support information on YouTube anymore. COVID just put a whole damper on all the cool uh, odd, weird stuff that used to be exposed. But what's your take on it? Is the weather modification tied into the aerosol spraying? Do you think that's a separate thing? What's your take on it, Ryan?
Well, that's a sticking point because they realized that they could change the weather because of the what they claim it is, the contrails. So
Mhm.
uh back in the 1960s, as with most things, there weren't rules against any of this. And actually, there still aren't. They started to put silver nitrate and potassium iodide in contrails. And what they found is that they could basically limit the amount of sun coming in much more. There was a dimming factor.
Mhm.
Now, the reason I say it's a sticking point is these are two different things, but as with everything, they bleed into each other. Right now, most jets are powered by Jet A or Jet A1 aviation grade kerosene fuel, which gallon for gallon puts out about when you see that contrail, they're not lying. There really is water vapor for 1 gallon of jet fuel burned, 1 gallon of water vapor more or less comes out. I'm not going to get into the specific math, but for round numbers, let's just roll with that. And US air travel has a projection to consume 30 billion gallons of jet fuel annually. So that's
Wow.
30 billion gallons of water that shouldn't be in our skies that are in our skies. And add to that, so there's already this, they noticed, wow, with all these planes, there's like some weather changes. We're noticing there's, clouds. Well, yeah, there's water in the sky. So that's the sticking point, but very much there is a climate hoax. They are altering the weather and they are adding now silver nitrate and potassium iodide, and they're at the point where they're no longer denying it. Here in Nevada, where I am right now, in Las Vegas, they had a big article that came out because, oh, we live in the desert, we need more water, so we took state funds. Of course, this article comes out after they do these experiments and these projects, but very
Mhm.
much they said that they had been cloud seeding to do this, and they're not the only ones. China's been doing it for years, and I mean, most every country is now involved. The United Arab Emirates is very involved. There's very real consequences too. What we're finding out is this silver nitrate and potassium iodide that they're cloud seeding with is actually probably having the reverse effect of what they want to happen. And
Mhm.
it's probably bringing on climate change, not to mention all sorts of health concerns for us that are getting
Mhm.
sprayed, for lack of a better word.
Mhm. Whoops. Oh, I thought I was muted. This time I was quick to unmute, but I was already unmuted. So cool. Okay, so I want to ask you a couple things. First of all, it's interesting how just this year they've said, oh, Bill Gates wants to do cloud seeding to block out the sun. If you ask me, this is already happening because we have not had a normal sky up in Canada for years. And there is like a mist, a mist over the whole sky. So, it really does kind of block out the sun. I'm wondering if that's already happening. And the other thing is up in Canada, I'm in Alberta, we've had the last 3 years, the weirdest changes in weather that I've ever seen. So I'm wondering, do you think that a lot of what they tell us is coming has already been happening for years and years? Do you think that is likely how they do it? And the second thing I want to say, I should probably wait, but I might forget, is um, with them, all the planes that are flying around doing the spraying, that belies the whole idea of reducing the carbon emissions that they think are going to make a difference. There must be, like you just said, there must be tons and tons of jet fuel being used so that they can alter the weather. I don't know. What's your thought, Ryan?
Such great questions. And this topic is so important because from the office I'm in right now, I can literally see the airport here in Vegas, and it's all day. Those planes coming in and out all day. And this is a place in the middle of the Mojave Desert where there should be literally no clouds. That's the most amazing thing. Is most days it's just it seems like AI, the perfectly blue sky with zero clouds. But we get the clouds. We get this weird cloud seeding, and there's something called the Vanagut connection, which doctor named Bernard Vanagat invented silver iodide cloud seeding in the 1960s. And what's odd about that is by the 1970s, the Department of Transportation was already noticing that the weather was changing, that this was noticeable with all these planes. And in 1974, and they started basically looking at this. The government did, and in 1978, well, they had a study. They had a study in '74 called the GARP study, GARP, and they started looking at this. And they did 70 countries. They had 40 vessels out in the ocean, 13 aircraft, all kinds of geo stations everywhere. They spent tons of money, and in 4 years, by 1978, they realized that weather and climate change are affected, and that this is affecting a bunch of other things. In fact, they went as far as to say that this was a matter of national security, that it was
Mhm.
in fact affecting, that was a Freudian slip. Infecting is what I meant to say. Food production and affecting energy use, water resources. Keep in mind that this stuff is super toxic. This is stuff that, as human beings, if we ingest it, and we can ingest it through our skin, we can ingest it through our eyes, through our gut.
Mhm.
The silver iodide, AGL, they call it. It's quite literally in the stratosphere where it didn't used to be, because they're now admitting they're spraying it in there to get more cloud seeding, to get more water, which seems like a good thing, but it's
Mhm.
having the reverse effect. It's sort of like, oh, how can I explain this? It's sort of like, well, if it's having a magnification of the
Mhm.
sun, and yet it's dimming the overall Earth. So wherever they're doing this, they call it global dimming. They what they're basically trying to do is create cloud cover, which works. But as we know, when you have a droplet of water and the sun goes through it, it has a magnification. And
Mhm.
the same is true up in the stratosphere. So temporarily, yeah, they're creating clouds, but over a long term scenario, it appears that essentially it's like a magnifying glass, and it's making everything worse and hotter.
Hotter. Mhm. Mhm. I've heard that. Denise has an interesting question. She said, "Do you think the amount of planes crashing have to do with the altered weather?"
It it could. And the only reason I say that is because some of them, if you're just dealing with sight, I'm sure everybody's probably, if they haven't been on a plane that's gone through a cloud, have probably seen a movie of a plane going through a cloud, and you can't see where you're going. And here in Vegas, in Nevada, there's one particular, this whole western mountainside here is well known as kind of being cursed.
Mhm.
And that's because from time to time, usually when storm fronts come in, pilots don't recognize how tall the mountains really are,
Mhm.
and they just run into the mountain. And this has happened year after year, many times. You can look it up online. I forget what they call it, but it helicopters, planes, mostly coming in from California, are back. In fact, the whole area is over in Good Springs. There's a famous crash that took place by the Pioneer Saloon, and that kind of started us off when people realized, wow, this is happening a lot. But it's basically the fact that they don't see where they're going, which, I mean, essentially, yeah, there's all kinds of electronics nowadays. But at the end of the day, if a pilot gets up to go to the bathroom, comes back, turns the electronics off, and gets on the helm for whatever reason, on the wheel, so to speak, they're if they're just going off of eyesight, you could miss things.
Mhm. Yep, fair enough. Good answer. So I also was wondering, because I think this is also tied into it, is the HAARP. And I have heard, but I don't know for sure, that there are similar facilities all over the world, not to mention places like Pine Gap that have these massive spherical, like, I don't know, antenna systems. I don't know what they are, but do you think that they are messing with different layers of our protective covering, the stratosphere, the heliosphere, the I don't know, you would know what they're all called. I was going to say menopause, but that's not it. It's a whole different podcast. Heliopause, I don't know, but what's your take on all that, Brian?
There's very much there's what they tell us, which they explain the reason for funding typically with one thing. And then once they have the funding, a lot of these projects, which many of them are top secret, once
Mhm.
they have the money, they do what they want for it. It's it
Yeah.
with it. So it's like a little kid saying, mom, I really need this money so I can buy a cell phone so I can stay in communication with you in case you need to get a hold of me.
Mhm.
But once they get the money and the cell phone, what they're doing with that phone could be
Mhm.
entirely different than, their initial, hey, it's just so I can get a hold of you. And the very same thing is true with this persistent weather modification. They're finding all kinds of things that may be potentially used as weapons. Things like the neutrino device down in Antarctica.
Yes.
Things like the one you mentioned. I don't want to say it too many times, or they don't like that talk. But I've talked to people that are with NASA and others that have gone to visit these sites, and they very much say that there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. There's a lot more power being used than they need. There's persistent side effects that are encountered. And
Mhm.
when you're dealing with something that's built for one reason, it's and then used for another, it's like it's like saying you need a tractor, but then you're ramming to plow the field, but then you're ramming things over and running them over with the tractor. So the tractor still has the ability to be a weapon.
Mhm. Mhm. True that. True that. The word I was looking for, Ryan, was magnetopause. I don't know why it came out menopause. Subscription, I don't know. Yeah, so there's that. So that's all interrelated, the cloud seeding and all that kind of stuff, the antenna systems, the power. There's no oversight, so we don't really know what's going on, and things just seem to be going from bad to worse. Now, one thing that fascinated me and made it so obvious was the flooding in Texas, where there was people who filmed with their camera that within a few minutes, a little trickling stream became a raging torrent that just flooded cities and took everything out. And there's no way that is natural. There's no way that is natural. So I'm wondering what your take is on what happened in Texas and why. Why do you think they did that, Ryan? Do you have any theories? Because that's really what we're, by the way, I had to switch my channel, my YouTube channel, from education. I switched it to entertainment, hoping that that would give us more freedom of speech. But anyway, what's your take on that, Ryan?
Well, I believe for entertainment purposes only,
Yeah.
I believe that the environmental effects that we're seeing in places like Texas and in the UAE, I don't know, places where they're doing this a lot. It's very similar. The Texas flooding was a lot like, I don't know if you remember the UAE flooding, which was ridiculous. All of the
Mm-hmm.
sudden, even the airports were just covered in feet and feet and feet of water in the middle of a desert. And the UAE is known as one of the places that does this the most behind China, and that's where Vegas got the idea from. A lot of UAE investors come over here. They funded things like City Center and a lot of stuff down on the strip, and we've learned a lot from the UAE in as much as how to water in the desert and things like that, drip irrigation. They're really smart about some things, but this cloud seeding They are way off the reservation, way off the map. They literally have caused so many issues, and it's much like Texas. I mean, that flooding in the UAE was apocalyptic, and there's no way that that was natural, or they've never seen flooding like that there. And this is
Mhm,
after they've been doing this cloud seeding, which their scientists claim are very important
mm,
projects. But there's more to it. These projects, a lot of these projects have been utilized as weapons as well, like what you were talking about with the HAARP and the neutrino device in Antarctica, and many of these other things, like dare I even say CERN. But
mm,
the ability to potentially spray particulates upon major population centers is something that is easily weaponized. In fact, there is information online about a big threat that the Defense Intelligence Agency had about people in the Middle East, which was the fact, hey, our guys are over there fighting these guys, but they seem to be much more motivated in their pursuits fighting than our guys. Our guys are out of their regular stomping grounds in a different place. And worst part about it is these other guys are praying 3, 4 times a day. They have a better connection to their higher power, and they're less fearful of dying, which is a
mhm,
problem. This was seen as a problem. So
mhm,
they started to experiment with a blocker, a neurological blocker, to block the brain's ability, the center of the brain that connects to higher consciousness. And they began spraying in certain areas certain chemicals to basically, they called it a god blocker. And what they were
mhm,
trying to do is get these people more down to a base level where they were not as fearless of
mhm,
dying and not as much of a threat. So I'm not saying that that's what they're doing with all these things, but the ability, whenever you get a technology that is effective, the first thing from a national security perspective is, how do we weaponize this in case we
mhm,
need to?
mhm. Yeah, I think you're right on the money. Now, there used to be, as I said earlier, some really cool videos on YouTube, all kinds of rabbit holes to go down. And one of them was actual film footage, well, probably digital now, but actual film footage of different specialists tied into the military that were actually talking about this God blocker technology. What they want to do is spray all of us with it so that we lose our internal sources of direction, our spirituality, our contact with God or whatever our higher power might be. And this was well known, and they couldn't wait to get using it. But then that, like the sun simulator and all the other planet Nibiru coming in, all kinds of cool stuff. It's all gone. Very difficult to find any of it. I saw a thing on YouTube that said that all the social media platforms are all repenting for all their censorship and wasn't their fault. They had to do it. They were so harassed by, I forget if it was FBI or CIA or whatever. I'm taking a big chance now talking openly about all this. Let's see if they're true to their word, whether this video gets taken down. Well, I'm live streaming to Rumble. So, worst case scenario. But I want to touch on something else, and that is I am well aware that the whole planet, dare I say, the whole solar system, perhaps even more, is a living thing. Everything depends on a careful checks and balances from the bugs that we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the bugs. The crops wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the bugs. Larger animals would not be here because they need the bugs, and on and on and on it goes. It's a biosphere. It's an ecosystem. It's a very delicate balance, and the weather and the amount of sunlight we get is intricately connected to the health, not just of the planet, but of everything that resides here, including us. And it just boggles my mind that the powers that be um, are doing this. And I don't even think they think it's a good idea. We know they want to start kettling us or corralling us so that we only eat certain foods. They want us eating bugs and they want us to get rid of all the cattle. They want all kinds of things. And so it makes sense because the weather modification is indeed going to affect the crops, going to affect our food sources, not to mention our mental health, which is very dependent on sunlight, especially those far infrareds that come in at the first thing in the morning, last thing at night. We desperately need all of that to work in perfect harmony. And so I'm kind of gearing up for a real shit show, pardon my language. But I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that sort of whole aspect of weather modification and um, this so called, well, what I will call the climate hoax, Ryan.
You know, I have so much. You have nailed so much here because this is absolutely insane the way that these things work. I tackled the obvious question, which is okay, these people, if there is some covert elite behind all this, they live here too. Why would they be doing this? Why would they be interested in destroying Gaia or destroying this living organism that we all rely upon?
Mhm.
And the interesting thing is, when it comes to climate hoax, there's got to be a reason, and that reason, believe it or not, you've heard all of the finger pointing at, well, this is all due to carbon dioxide and burning fossil fuels, and this would not make sense for people that are invested in those things to say unless they were getting money on the back end. And the
Mhm.
way they're getting money on the back end is not only are they selling you the fossil fuels, but on the back end, they're selling you the carbon credits, which
Mm.
is genius, which is basically like China is the worst offender. And what they're basically saying back to the United Nations, they sure came back into the mix quick. But
Mhm.
there's all these covert elite, the same elite that are in charge of everything else, and they collect what are known as carbon credits. And
Mhm.
everything you need to know about carbon credits is, well, you can still burn as much gas as you want, as many fossil fuels as you want, except you need to pay us for credits to do so. So they're
What a
making money.
scam.
It's unbelievable. And they are able to, at the same time, say, well, we're doing this for the benefit of the planet, but they're getting money coming and going.
Yep, yep. This is sort of related, sort of not related. Is I did some volunteer work for a very well-known nonprofit in on Vancouver Island, and I found out that the whole thing was a scam. So, and the reason I'm explaining this is because it's like a microcosm of the greater system. Okay. And it was a complete scam. So they would have somebody write up a proposal for funding from the government, so many millions of dollars, because they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And they do this whole flowery story. Government gives them the money, approves their proposal, and guess what? They do what they damn well want with the money, and nobody checks up to see if they're actually doing what this funding was supposed to do. And the woman that was training me and she was very well versed in business, she said, Karen, you have to understand it's a dog and pony show. You do a dog and pony show, they all clap their hands like seals and write you a check. There's no seeing if you actually do any of it. It's complete fiction. And so this is how nonprofits work. This is how different organizations that get funding from the government work. This is how, I don't call them the elites, I call them the parasite class, because everything they have they've stolen from everyone else, plus I don't see anything elite about them. But anyway, I know we use the term elite so everyone knows what we're talking about. But anyway, that's how they operate. It's how it all operates from top to bottom, from top to bottom, from bottom to top. And so I think the lack of accountability is shocking, absolutely shocking, and the lack of foresight. So I just want to touch on another thing that's related, a little bit off topic, but related, and that is all of these most powerful people in the world, like the bankers, I'll just throw out Rothschilds, a whole bunch of them. They're all the banking and the Rockefellers and all the rest of them. They're totally inbred. And anyone that studied any amount of history will see what happened, like, for instance, to the royals. I guess the Habsburgs is a good example if you want to do some research. They degenerate very quickly, mentally and physically and in every way. So here we have a bunch of these inbred people who can't function mentally anymore, making these tremendously dangerous decisions, thinking they know more than us because they have the power and the money. So I'll just cut it there because I can go off, attached rabbit hole after attached rabbit hole. But I think it bears mentioning because it's all part of the issue and the problem, in my humble opinion.
Well, it comes back to they just, like you said, they don't care, and they just will do anything to keep the rest of us out of the room. That's what they're
Yeah.
trying to do. Keep the rest of us out of the room. They know that it's simple to control people as long as you don't play by the rules. And that's kind of like this carbon offset platform and program, the carbon credits.
Mm-hmm.
If you Google who collects carbon credits in a regular Google search, you have to go for pages and pages and pages because it's all just like you're saying, a dog and pony show. They will not tell you who is collecting this. And then finally, you realize that it's the UN carbon offset platform, which is
Mm-hmm.
basically this algorithm, right? They've had scientists create this calculation formula
Mm.
where this is basically what happened. To simplify, we live in a town. We see that a factory down there, let's say a refinery or whatever it is emitting, obviously, a ton of spewage into the air, and this is bad for all of us. So we go to our local government leaders and say, "Hey, this guy down here, this company is ruining the environment. What do we do about it?" And they said, "Let me handle it," because chances are local government knows somebody or is somebody affiliated with that
Yeah.
particular factory.
Yeah.
And so they said, how can we keep this regular citizen at ease and still go on doing whatever we want? And the way they
Mm-hmm.
do that is they say, well, what I can do is I can sell you a carbon credit. You can do this. And then the money that we get from that, we say that we're fighting the climate change. We're fighting the obvious destruction of the environment, when in reality, we're just taking the taxpayer money to help fund this. We're taking a fine or a fee that we enter into a machine that nobody sees except you or I, and
Mm-hmm.
a back handshake. And basically, you realize that yes, it's the UN, that it's this good old boys club that
Mm-hmm.
is doing this. And if this good old boys club, like you said, has been the same good old boys club all the way back to the monarchs. If you go in every year, they have these agendas that they put out for the rest of us to read, which are impossible to get. And
Mm-hmm.
I get them every year. And they hate you. If you go into your local Barnes and Nobles and you say, I would like the United Nations agenda, they say, why? Why do you want that? Well, because I want to see what they're talking about, at least the stuff that's not behind closed doors. And they will order it for you, but only after they ask you a bunch of questions about why you
Sure.
want it. They're usually about this thick. They're paperback, and you'll be reading about things like AI, carbon credits, weather modification, cloud seeding, all the topics that we know they're doing, where they do this dog and pony show. They put it in a nice little format and put it out to the public. And what we basically have to do is read between the lines, and it doesn't take long. to
Uh-huh.
realize what's really going on, where they're moving, what direction they're in. And it is very much all a globalist system with AI generated algorithms. And, this is all published by the Lucius Trust, which used to be known as the Lucifer Trust. And this
Interesting.
very satanic. And what's very wild about that, going back to these covert, what did you call them? The parasite class. I like that. These
Parasites.
these covert elite billionaires, what we realize is that they are all members, many of them, of secret mystery religions of the elite.
Uh-huh.
And to put it in a nutshell, they believe that they will continue to come back. I'm not saying they're wrong, but they believe in reincarnation. And so they really don't care what they do to the place. They
Uh-huh.
believe that they're going to reincarnate and that the dream will change. They believe we all live in a dream, which also is not incorrect completely, but
Uh-huh.
they believe that basically, who cares? We're going to hit the reset button on the Nintendo and come back anyway, and we'll just keep playing the same game. So it's fascinating that these are all the same bloodlines, and many of them are, in fact, yeah, they do not like to mix with commoners. They don't like to share the wealth.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I agree 100%. So another thing I wanted to say, and there's another side rabbit hole, but it is connected, and not everyone's making these connections. um, you know how we have the Mandela effect, and you could swear something was a certain way, and then you go in and it says no, it's never been that way. You're misremembering. Okay. Well, they recently have found artifacts with the fruit of the loom symbol, with the cornucopia, all kinds of artifacts proving that, yeah, that was how it was. So somehow they've changed reality. My suspicion is AI, which has actually been evolving since the 1950s. This is not a recent thing. So, what I'm wondering is, you know how they justify everything they do by pointing to laws? How do we know those laws actually were in existence? We know somebody isn't creating the laws, either AI or man made, and then putting it in and then trying to do like gaslighting with us and say, oh, no, you have to follow it. It's the law. And most ordinary common humaners will go, oh my God, it is. It's the law. We better follow it because the law is like sacred. You know what I mean? And maybe it's just a bunch of crap that isn't true law at all. It makes me very much want to get back to common law instead of maritime law, but that's probably a whole separate podcast. I don't know. What are your thoughts about that, Ryan?
Yes, there is something that they despise. It's important. And I hate to use the word they, so I'll just call them what they are. And that is, a lot of these mystical orders despise what's known as divine law.
Yes.
And divine law is more or less what the founding fathers of the United States tried to point out, that there are God given rights that no man can take from someone else. And they do not like important documents that point out that there is a divine law, because many of these orders, no offense against Thelemites or those that follow Aleister Crowley, but they believe that love is the law and you love under will. So basically, that gives them a loophole or a free pass to do what they want. This is my life, and I get that. It's kind of that YOLO, but in the you only live once. But they know for a fact that they don't. So what they're trying to do is create a loophole where they can basically do whatever they want in this lifetime, with the understanding that they're coming back, because many of them are taught religions that we never, thank goodness, get exposed to as children. And
Mhm.
more and more of this is coming out as you get into like, eighth, ninth generation Illuminati. Things start getting really dark. Third and fourth generation, they know that mom and dad are up to something, but they're not quite sure what it is. Essentially, they're just like our parents, but they are just a lot more lucky. But when you,
Mhm.
and interestingly, the word lucky comes from Loki, who is the king of the underworld. And so
Mm.
it's not luck. They have the deck stacked and they continue to stack the deck.
Yep, I agree. Now we're quickly running out of time as we usually do because the conversation is so lively. Um, and before I forget, I want to mention there's an interesting new series out on Netflix, and it is called Billionaire's Bunker. So you know how all these billionaires and so-called, parasite elites, whatever you want to call them, they have all these bunkers, actual underground and even under ocean, whole civilizations ready to receive them for when they want to duck out when they've just messed up, our world, and they want to duck out. And I thought to myself, wow, can you imagine if they're only their own kind are down there, and they're down there and they're sealed in there? They got to deal with each other. My God, that's a fate worse than death. So anyway, then I was surprised that they actually came out with a series on Netflix called Billionaire's Bunker, and it's exactly that. These people are down in a bunker, and then two of the families are actually got a feud going on. And I haven't watched beyond the first episode. It's actually not that well done, but it's an interesting concept that not all is going to be paradise for them down below. Now, with the few minutes we have left, Ryan, can you take us? We've covered, the cloud seeding and weather modification and all that. How does this now all tie in to the climate hoax? Where, first of all, I know it's a hoax because you got all these rich people buying beachfront property, but you also can look at just images of 200 years ago, or whenever. I guess that's probably a little going back a little far, but just different landmarks, how far the water came up. It's the same today. It hasn't changed at all. And so I'm wondering if you want to take us into the whole climate hoax, and what they're trying to achieve by that. And again, is that just tied into that whole Ponzi scheme or whatever you want to call it of the carbon credits? I don't know. I don't know where to go with that, but I know that they're somehow linked.
It's 100% the goal to, in my opinion, and this is just by reading these agendas that the UN puts out. In my opinion, the UN carbon offset platform, all of these devices that they use to keep us in check, these laws, like you said, these control mechanisms that allow them to get away with it, but we can't. It's like playing Monopoly, right? What's the first thing you do when you start owning a bunch of properties? You get that get out of jail free card. And uh, I love that game because it's so true. Pretty soon it gets boring because the same person owns the whole deck, and that's
Yeah.
how this Babylonian money magic works. But the most important thing is they're always worried that somebody can take it away from them that's a better player. So what they want to do is convince us all that we aren't special because they know we all are. And like you said, with the earth, it is 100% divinely made. It's something that nobody can explain. I say we, but it's not me, but I mean, governments around the globe have done all kinds of experiments, nuclear, you name it. If they can poison and toxify and push the envelope, they do it. And none of these things yet have been able to destroy this divinely created program, the earth, Gaia, whatever you want to call it, that seems like a living organism because it's able to bounce back. Much like if we get a scratch, we
Yes.
heal, which is
Hmm.
inexplicable from really, a divinely created organism. And same with the oil. You pump it out of the earth, and somehow it regenerates. This
It
was
does.
my grandfather was he was a chemist for Chevron Corporation, and he when I would ask him, like, Grandpa, when is oil going to stop? Like, when, and he said, well, between you and I, he said, never. It just keeps regenerating. We don't know how. So they have to pretend that there's this thing called peak oil that we're going to run out. This is valuable. A lot like the diamonds that De Beers, there's a reason they hoard all the diamonds, and that's because there's a lot of them. But then when you go to buy a diamond, they make it seem like there's only one diamond and you're lucky you're able to get one. It's the same thing. It is basically controlling the markets. And what
Mhm.
they're trying to do is control our market, which is a connection to how special we are. They don't want us to believe we're special. They don't want us to believe we have conscious contact with a higher power or the ability to manifest the creation or the dream or the life we want. They want to keep that all down and hush hush. And they want us to believe that Kronos or Saturn is in charge. In other words, there's only the material realm, there's no way out of it. There's no abundance. It's all scarcity, and we need to rely on them to get anything.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, a lot of people fall for it, but it's just not
Mhm.
true.
Mhm. Mhm. Yep, I totally agree. And I mean, even the whole money system is again dark magic and a Ponzi scam. It's all or scheme, Ponzi. It's all ridiculous, and it could be so different. Just looking at all the people that have come up with inventions from Tesla to Royal Rife for healing and um, many people that have come out with these great inventions of cars that run on air and on water and all kinds of things. Well, what happens? Mostly these guys all interestingly die. And all their material is taken and confiscated. This is no different than what happened back with Tesla. He had funding, I think, from JP Morgan. And then when JP Morgan realized that it would cut out his business and his copper industry and the wires needed for electricity and all that, he defunded and basically bankrupted Tesla. When he died, all this stuff was stolen. So I think there's more than sorry, there's more than enough evidence that there are healthy solutions, and so now we have to figure out how to deal with those that are in power. And my opinion is, and this is just my opinion, that if we stop giving them the power that they desire, because it's an illusion, and people like James Corbett, he says, laugh at them. That's the most powerful magic. Just laugh at them. And, wasn't that long ago where if you were upset with your government official, you would throw rotten cabbages and tomatoes and rotten vegetables at them. And that was an acceptable outlet for the commoners. Why don't we get back into doing that? They did do pie in the faces for a while here in Canada. I don't know if they did that in the States. But, we got to, I think, first of all, be aware and be open minded before we can really come together and change things. But i do I do agree with you, Ryan, that the earth will heal when we leave it alone. And maybe we'll have some kind of a perceived threat. They'll all go down into their bunkers, they'll be stuck down there, and then we can make good use of the planet up here. I don't know what the answer is. Tennessee Kentucky Bigfoot has a good thought. He says, I guess info war is about the same energy war. Yeah, well, information wars and energy wars for sure, and makes a lot more sense than guns and bullets and bombs and all that other stuff, but that's for another podcast. Um, I want to give you a minute, Ryan, to just sort of put your last minute thoughts together. But I want to quickly say hello to some people in the live chat. They're amazing. They really add to the conversation. Denise is my very faithful and awesome supporter and moderator in the live chat. We've got Kristen, who just adds a lovely facet to the conversation. We also have, just going down here, have a look and see if I don't want to miss anybody. We have Dascany 55. Thank you for joining us today. Of course, we have Maya Kaya. Nice to see you. and Tennessee, Kentucky Bigfoot. Always so good to see you. Oh, we also have Fearlessly Phoenixing. She's a big fan of your show, Ryan. Lovely. So glad that you could make it. And let's see. Hiya. I think I think I think I've got everybody covered now. So I just want you all to know I appreciate you so much for joining us. If I missed your comments, I apologize, but there's only so much. So Ryan, why don't you sort of have some closing remarks for us? What you think is going on, what you think the solutions are. Sorry, I didn't mean to dump it all on your lap, but you've always got such amazing things to say that I feel pretty confident doing that. And also, then please tell people what you're up to and where they can find you. That would be awesome.
It's like the storming of any castle, because that's what these people are. These are the castle dwelling covert elite, the parasite class. And the only way to storm the castle, it's built too well. The moat is too big. They've got the boiling oil. They've got the cross bridge, the drawbridge. They've got the archers. You can't get in the regular way. The only way is to infiltrate. And a lot of people ask me, why I collect, for example, Skull and Bones Order 322 memorabilia, rings, pins, crosses, and not to mention all these books on the esoteric and the occult and all these secret mystery schools. Interestingly, the Skull and Bones Order 322 began at Yale, and they opened a second chapter at the University of Utah, my alma mater, in Salt Lake City, Utah, in 1910. And they kind of had learned to be more covert, more secretive, and they would not tell people where the tomb was, which is where they gather. And of course, the tomb, kind of like you're talking, is always sort of a bunker. It's got to be somewhat below ground for the rituals. And interestingly, with all of these things, and especially with these technologies, it's all the same. In other words, also at University of Utah, and this is just as an example, in 1989, two electrochemists came up with something called cold fusion, which was, hey, this is the end of our energy problem. Somehow, this whole thing kind of got swept under the rug. They could never recreate it in a laboratory. And now if you Google cold fusion, what you get is something totally different. It's a server side application. That's what's taken over. You can't really Google what they found in 1989, but it'll show you a server side application that came out in 1995 that has to do with AI. And this is just the same tricks that they did with Tesla, with the guy that ran cars on hydrogen. And I heard, this is really wild, that the same people, who were being pointed at as the bad guys for creating vehicles, which ran on fossil fuels, which aren't fossils at all, but anyway, that ran on fossil fuels, are the same ones that are investing in many of these electric car companies, because once you perfect one machine that's going to last forever, I mean, they could build a vehicle that would last forever. And that is not what they want. They need planned obsolescence. So then they switch gears and they begin another product line, an electric car line. We get to sell chargers, we get to sell cars, we get to sell batteries. And the same people are invested in both. So again, the only way to get in is to infiltrate. In other words, go through the back door, infiltrate the thinking, infiltrate the organizations, infiltrate the mystery religions, and basically leave the back door open, because the only way you can change any of this stuff is from the inside out. And I often joke that people should invest in the companies they hate the most. If you despise Palantir, buy as much stock as you can, because then you're on the board. If you don't like these things, the only way you can change it is from the inside out, because they will not let you in under their own accord. So you have to infiltrate. In other words, much like Yale University, that was founded by a bunch of spies, and the Skull and Bones Society, you have to infiltrate or be a wolf in sheep's clothing get in, leave the back door open, and then you can bum rush the show and change everything.
Awesome. Awesome. So Ryan, what do you got cooking? You've been doing some investigations into some really significant cattle mutilations in your area. You've got some footage of a cryptid that was found on your property. I want to talk about cryptids, I think, next month in our discussion when Gary can join us. I think he'd love that. And oh, you just have so much on the go all the time. And of course, you probably don't want to share everything with us, but what do you want to share with us? And so that people can come and check out some of your podcasts and your really interesting, informative information.
Thanks. Yeah, it's really interesting you mentioned the cattle mutilation. I actually just had to send out a meter up to Utah this morning, something to measure an energy sensor for this particular type of stuff. But it's kind of like living in two worlds. And what's amazing, I think, about the paranormal is it is one of those things that is kind of like a, a poke at your shoulder, reminding you that we live in a magical place, that everything does
Mm-hmm.
not need to adhere to the rules. And many of these supernatural, otherwise cosmic or non human intelligences um, have their fingerprints on everything. If you look around, whether it's, a hideous corpse of a massive bull in a field that has no blood, seems like it was worked on, doesn't look like it was by human hands, or if it's a creature that technically should not exist in a particular area and you catch some video evidence of it. Both of those are just hinting at the fact that things are not entirely as they want them to appear on your, regular TV station, that there's more going on, that the world is more magical, that we are way more important, and that, if this stuff, no matter how dark and grisly it is, exists, then other stuff has to exist too. And yeah, we are divine intelligences in a divine creation, spiritual beings engaged in a somewhat material realm. It's not as material as they want you to believe it is,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a pretty magical place that we live. So I just love that stuff, no matter how. I love the love and light, but I also love the darkness because it reminds me, there cannot be a shadow without light. And
Yep.
so it all comes back to the light.
Absolutely. Ryan, for those on audio podcast, you want to just say where people, what your websites are and your YouTube channel?
Absolutely. You can listen to me on YouTube at Hero Paranormal. You can also go to heroparanormal.com if you have a hard time finding that, and just find one of the free episodes and it'll take you right to it. You can subscribe via Patreon, also available through heroparanormal.com. And you can follow any of the weird stuff going on at Space Wolf Research on Facebook or Hero Paranormal on Facebook. And yeah, we've got some more things coming out. I've got a new website coming out that's going to be called spiritualhitman.com. And that's going to be exciting too.
Oh, wonderful. And thank you, Ryan, so much. I know you're a super busy guy. You always make time to come on the podcast. I appreciate you so very much. Thank you for the spice body moisturizer and for the soap. Very kind of you. And for those of you who missed the beginning of the podcast, please do go and check it out. I want to thank everybody, whether you're watching a replay, listening to an audio, whether you were able to come to the live chat. I appreciate each and every one of you very, very much. Come back and join me for the Aliens and Angels podcast on Sunday, 11 a.m. Pacific, noon Mountain Time, or 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Jeff Selver is coming back with an update on his contact with what we call the Greys. And yeah, I hope you all have, oops, I better check my messages before we go. Just Maya says, thank you, Ryan. Denise says, thank you, Ryan and Karen. And Kristen says, thank you all so much. Wonderful. Much love and light to everybody. And as Ryan always says, don't forget to take a look around. With that, we'll say bye-bye for today. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining me for the Quantum Guide Show. Become the change that you wish to see in the world. Subscribe to my YouTube and other channels at Karen Holton TV. Click the like button, leave me a comment, and share this podcast with your friends. Read about my true life ET contact in my book called Transdimensional: Meet the New Neighbors, which is now available in Amazon bookstores worldwide. Check out my website at www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com to see my free resources and amazing products and services. All the links will be in the description below. As part of the Forbidden Knowledge Network, you will find the Quantum Guide Show with Karen Holton and also the Aliens and Angels podcast on all audio platforms. Until next time, keep up the good work.